Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today is the Stacks Book Club Day. We welcome back author and commentator Elamin Abdelmahmoud to discuss our book club selection, Season of Migration to the North by Tayeb Salih. It's a 1966 classic novel about an unnamed narrator returning and readjusting to his Sudanese village following a long stint studying abroad in Europe. The book was named the most important novel of the 20th century by a panel of Arab writers and critics in 2001. Elamin and I dig into the story and its historical significance, as well as the ways issues of the day can be read into this text. There are plenty of spoilers in this episode, so please read the book before you dive in. Listen through to the end of today's episode to reveal our August book club pick. Quick reminder, everything we talk about on today's episode can be found in the link in the show notes. If you love this show and you want more of it, please head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack. We've got bonus episodes, a super active Discord community, monthly book club meetups, and more. It's also a great way for you to show your support for the work we do on this independent Black woman-owned and run podcast. So head to patreon.com/thestacks to join. Thank you to our newest members of the Stacks Pack, Janisa Conception, Amy, Irina, Suzanne Barron, Julie Chavez, and Cortu. Thank you all so much for your support. And of course, as always, thank you to the entire Stacks Pack. I could not do it without y'all. Okay, now it is time for my chat with Elamin Abdelmahmoud about Season of Migration to the North. And reminder, there are spoilers. All right, everybody, I am back. It is the Stacks Book Club Day. I am joined by the wonderful Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Elamin, welcome back to the Stacks.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
So happy. We're talking about Season of Migration to the North by Tayeb Salih. I did it wrong again, but I tried. And this is a classic Sudanese novel.
It is.
It's like one of those books that gets the title of like the great Sudanese novel. And before we say more, everyone who's listening, we are going to spoil this book. We're going to talk about what happens. We're not going to worry about you and your feelings. So if you haven't read the book and you want to read the book, pause this episode, come back when you finished. Yes. Otherwise, here we go. So I've been doing this show for 4 years, and the first 4 years I did this show, I always just dive into the conversation and never explain what the book is about. But my resolution for 2022 is to try to remember to tell people what the fuck we're talking about.
Just a general heads up.
Yeah.
It's going to come.
Just a quick rundown. Okay, so the book, Season of Migration to the North, is about a unnamed narrator who has gone away to school from Sudan to England and has come back after about 7 years. And when he comes back, there is a unknown man named Mustafa who he's like, who the fuck is that? And everyone's like, that's Mustafa. He just moved here. We don't know a lot about him, but he's married and he's a chill dude. He's got good vibes. We like him. And eventually unknown narrator and Mustafa come together in a drunken night. Mustafa blows his cover as just an average Sudanese man, and he reveals he's a Sudanese man who also went away and learned white things in the white places of England and such.
Yes.
And that's the premise of the book. There's a lot of juicy stuff, which we'll get to, but that's the premise. Okay.
You did it. I think that was an excellent summary. That was fantastic.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to get to the good stuff. Generally speaking, we always start here. Can you just tell us what you thought of the book?
Of course. Well, okay. So first things first, like that's a complicated question because I read it in English. I read it in English.
That was one of my follow-up questions.
I read it in English, even though this book, Tayeb Salih originally wrote it in Arabic. He was fluent in both Arabic and English, but my Arabic is atrophied, and I have all kinds of complicated relationship to that. I can read most words, but can I follow an entire novel? No. And so I read the great translation by Dennis Johnson Davies. Dennis Johnson Davies has basically translated some of the greatest Arabic works of all time. And like, this is kind of his thing. This is the big translation that made him. So, you know, the book comes out in 1966. Johnson Davis translates it, I think, in like 1968 or 69, something like that, I want to say. So I read it in English, and that's complicated for me. And so right away, I'm already like, oh no, I'm specifically like picking a side, maybe, or at least like picking certain nuances that might not necessarily be represented because I'm reading this in English and not in Arabic. But I have to say, like, I approached this book from this like long, deep history that it has, like this is a book that my parents have talked about. My mom was like, yeah, it was like banned for a little while, and then they unbanned it, and then they banned it again. It's a book that has all of the rich complexities of Sudan and its relationship to colonialism in it. And I approached it like homework because I was like, well, I guess I better get to know the great Sudanese novel if I'm going to sort of reflect about my relationship to Sudan. So like that's how our relationship began.
Okay. This is a very basic question. Did you like the book?
No, I felt very uncomfortable. Well, I mean, like I liked the book, but I didn't like reading it, if that makes sense. And by that I mean, sure. Like, as I was reading it, like I really felt this tension between the unnamed narrator, who is like, he's gone away to the West and he wants to come back, and he's like expecting to be treated in a certain way in his village because he's like, oh, he's like an educated man. And then there's one person who won't kind of give him that satisfaction. There's one person that won't give him the satisfaction of treating him as like special because he went away to the West to study, and that's Mustafa Said. And it's like as he like is dealing with him, he realizes that he too went away to the West, but he hated it. He had this like really emotionally volatile relationship to the West, and so they took away different things from being in the West, and that is the central tension of colonialism, I think. And so it felt like really uncomfortable. So I was like, while I'm like reading it, being like, I'm really impressed by everything happening here. I was also like, this is very uncomfortable for me to read. Yeah. Okay. What about you? Did you like it? What's your vibe?
So I'm not a fiction person. I don't like fiction very much. I read it obviously for my work, and I do read it sometimes. I struggle with what I call fictiony fiction. And this book feels very fiction-y to me. It has very much a book you'd be assigned in school vibes. As I was reading it, I was like, I've got to keep track of the Nile because I'm sure the Nile is a metaphor for this. Or like, when he like early on when Mustafa Said is like talking about how he's a taut bow and there's like water skins. And I'm like, oh, I bet that in school there would be a whole day dedicated to like the tension of the taut bow. And so for me, I was just like, am I getting this? Why is this great? Like I couldn't relax into the book because it had been hyped up as great, and because I knew that it was like historically important. So I came to it with like all this energy of like, I have to love this book to be a smart person who cares about Africa,
No, like, that's too much pressure
in like a crazy way.
Yeah, that's too much pressure.
So I didn't love it.
Okay.
I struggled with it, but there were some scenes that I was like, okay, I see you. I feel you. Like Hosanna bint Mahmoud and an old creepy boy. What's his name? And Wad Reyes.
Yeah.
That stuff.
Whew. Very uncomfortable.
Okay.
Rendered very uncomfortably on the page.
Yeah. And like another thing that I don't love about fiction is I don't love when nothing happens. And while this is a short book, there is just one. Like there's just like a few scenes. You know what I mean? A lot of it is like internal reflection. Yeah. And so that stuff is harder for me. The scenes, that last scene in the study, I was like, okay, creepy study with all Anglo things. Like, yes.
And the dedication, like the book's dedication. But can we talk a little bit about you not liking fiction? Because I think that's a really interesting frame, because in many ways, like I was reading this, I was like, this isn't a book. This is a play. Like it really feels like it's like so it's so scene oriented, and it's also so like every word I say has 85 different meanings, and like that is and there's an economy of writing in it. I mean, it's like so it's a short book. It's 170 pages.
So short.
That you kind of
my copy is 130 pages.
Okay, it's
very short, crammed in there.
Yeah, mine is way bigger for some reason. And it's still like only 170 pages. And so like
Yeah.
even within all of that as a framework, you kind of go like, okay, you are meant to do something very specific and precise in this. And maybe it's not meant to be a novel more than it is a play. And I was kind of looking up to be like, if it's been adapted into anything, you know, and like there's a couple like theater adaptations, but like hasn't been a movie yet. And that's interesting to me. Anyway.
That was one of my questions for you, was like, do you think this should be a movie? And I think that it should or could be. I think the problem is it would be done poorly. This is like the kind of story that I just know would get fucked up so bad. Yeah. Like it would make for a good thing to watch, but it would be done horribly. And like the white women would become unbearable and it would become all about them and it would be a nightmare.
Oh, that's a really interesting point too, because I think like on the screen, seeing 3 white women kill themselves in relationship to this dude. Okay, that's right. We already set up people for spoilers. And then a 4th one get violently murdered as he's sort of like playing out his relationship to colonialism. I actually don't think you can render that on screen anymore. Like I think like we've sort of moved past that in our screen politics and even possibly in our novel politics. Like I think you could do this shit in 1966, you know, but like you can't do that now. That's just no. It's just a no.
Well, right. Because like, okay, so one of the things as I was reading the book is I was like, okay, I get that this is about colonialism and like white, Western and Eastern, but a lot of the book I was just like, this is a book about sexism.
Yeah.
Like this is a book about misogyny, which when you read about the book in places like a Cliff Notes moment or like those kind of places that summarize these books, they don't talk about misogyny. And I thought that was so interesting because in reading it, all I could think about was the politics of male, female. And then I was like, well, maybe like as I was pretending to be an English teacher, I was like, well, maybe you know, the author is using women and men as a metaphor for the East and the West. And so that's why it feels like so polarizing. I don't know if he is, but like I like the scene with Hosanna and Juarez or whatever, like I kept thinking that he's supposed to be the West and she's supposed to be Sudan or African countries or whatever. And like he's abusing her. So she finally like is like, fuck you, I'm going to kill you. But then I couldn't really resolve the metaphor of like her killing herself. I was like, does that mean that the Sudanese people, he thinks that they're going to like, I guess like turn on themselves and I guess some of that is what happened. So I don't know. That's like, a lot of the sexism stuff and like misogyny, I kept reading, but I know I was reading it obviously through this 2022 lens and not at all through this 1966 lens. Yeah. So I don't know. Just there was a lot there.
That's a tough thing to reconcile. It's a tough thing to reconcile because this wasn't a Tayeb Salih problem. It was like everybody was writing like this. Everybody was like, the woman shall be the metaphor for the thing, and then things will happen to her, and then it'll be like, this is like, you know, and it's something that we look at now as like, you know, it's that fiction to fiction thing you're talking about. It's like the metaphor is too strict almost. Like it's like too bound to the specific meaning. Like this person is supposed to represent this one specific idea and no other ideas. I do think that that interaction, like maybe what Rais was meant to represent, like an unmodern conception of Sudan, if you will, and the ways that you might like can make yourself a victim to it in a way, while the people who are educated in the West are sort of like wringing their hands about how to get involved. But again, like that lands as too heavy a metaphor. You know what I mean? Like it's almost too economical. Like it's like, give me something else, because if otherwise, it should just be a play. Otherwise, like maybe novel is like not the form to render this particular story. But having said that, who the fuck am I to say, you know, what's to be a novel, what's not to be a novel?
Well, right. And I don't necessarily like, I mean, I have a background in theater, so I think about plays a lot, but I don't necessarily think about plays as being super different from novels in a lot of ways. Like, I think they do similar things. Depending on the novel, some novels are very far from plays, but like the use of language and like the poetry and the metaphor and the theme and all of that stuff. But there's just like more of a visual aspect in the theater.
Can we fold in a little bit of biography into this? Yes. Because like I think it's really interesting to think about like Tayeb Salih himself as a figure, because like he left Sudan but he never went back. He never went back. He was writing so much of this stuff from London, like so much of most of his literary career happened while he was abroad. Like he visited, but he never went back to sort of like stay and like live there. And I think to me that's interesting because it's like, are we to understand this as like his own complexity with colonialism and like being educated by the colonialists? You know, I think he studied, I think his university education was in Sudan, but then he left and he just like didn't come back, you know? And maybe there's something to be said about like not looking too deeply into the author's biography and how it's woven into the text. But I'm like, I couldn't divorce that from the text. It kept on being like, is this you? Are you trying to like inject yourself into the story in this way? Like, are you the unnamed narrator sort of unsure of how to help this new country while you're watching people who've come to hate colonialism kind of destroy themselves in different ways?
Yeah. I read his biography about him. Like I looked him up after I finished the book.
Yeah.
So I didn't read the book knowing that about him.
Right.
Like I didn't know anything about him. I purposefully didn't. I also purposely didn't read the introduction until after I finished the book.
Good call.
Because I like to go into these things like, okay, I'm reading this classic novel on my own.
Yeah.
Like, let me see how it lands. But
Yeah.
I do think, I think that when the biography of the author becomes part of the book, it becomes complicated because is it our place to say that this is or isn't, you know, their intent, right? Like, I feel like that's a conversation that comes up all the time now, especially with authors of color or authors like queer authors or authors from different countries.
Yeah.
It's like we read these books through the lens of their biography when maybe they're just like trying to tell a story. And obviously you can't separate this from him because we do know that he went away. Like we do know that he's from the Sudan. We do know that he left.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I mean, I don't know. I think it's both things, right? Like he's in the book, I'm sure. And also he's not.
I mean, but what do you, I guess like what's interesting about that is that you specifically try to distance yourself from the introduction and like the larger narrative context about, you know, that the novel exists in, just to be like, let me just engage with the work. But I would find that in many ways to be really, really hard to do because specifically the novel, like Season of Migration, like it's, when you read the introduction, you're like, this novel is supposed to be doing work, right? Like it's supposed to be like doing specific work in a political climate, you know? And you kind of go like, oh, how does this interact with what I know was happening in, you know, in the Middle East or in Africa or in Sudan at the time? And sometimes the introduction can be so helpful in that because like 1966 is what had come out 10 years after Sudan gained its independence. And I think that's like a really sensitive moment in a growing sort of independence of a country, but also a country that very immediately was plunged into civil war even before it gained its independence. And so all of these kind of come into play when you consider how he's casting these characters about, you know? So I don't know. I'm of two minds of this. I think it would be tough to go into this cold in a way.
Well, so, okay, I didn't go in completely cold because I read your essay in your book that talked about this book. So you did some of that work for me that the introduction did.
Gotcha.
Because you put it in context. So I had a little bit of the context, but I didn't like go out of my way to read more about the book until I finished it.
Okay.
Part of it is because spoilers everywhere. The introduction is full of spoilers. I'm like, can you guys not tell me what happens to everybody in the first, like it's only a 140-page book and you've told me everything that happens.
Yeah.
And so now I'm here, like, so I learned my lesson a few books ago doing that, reading a classic book, reading the introduction first.
Of course.
But I did go back and read it, of course, because I was very curious. My introduction is from Layla Lalami, and I was curious what she had to say. But yeah, no, I think part of my difficulty reading this book is that I don't know a ton of history about the Middle East, Africa, the Sudan in the 1950s and 60s. Like that's not something that I was taught in school. I'm sure that comes as exactly 0% surprise to anyone who is an American listening to this and probably many Canadians.
Yeah, most people.
Yeah, like I just don't think it's not that I don't think we're not taught the recent history of the world in colonialized nations or maybe anywhere. I don't know. And so like one of the things I was thinking about was like, there's the three women that kill themselves, and then there's the woman who he kills. And I was like, are they supposed to be metaphors for specific like kinds of Sudanese people or specific kinds of Western people, and like that are drawn to him because they're drawn to him for different reasons. Like there's the one woman who's like, I knew I loved you the moment I heard your name. And she like goes to some event and they like fall in love. But then there's the other woman who's married and has cancer. And I'm like, is she supposed to be a metaphor for like the Egyptians or like, you know what I mean? Like I really struggled to try to like make sense of what he was making sense of. Because I have no doubt if you are in Sudan in 1968 or whatever, this book means a lot different.
I think that's true. But I don't know if those, specifically those women, I don't know if they were supposed to be sort of individual different metaphors so much as in many ways they represent different ways of exotification, right? Like the different ways of he is a black man in the UK and he's being seen in a different and very like attractive light. He wants to be seen in this light. Right. And it does something to him. It does something to his self-worth. And it's like, I know that, I am hated, but in other ways, I'm also desired. What does that do to a person? And,
right.
I was really struck by the ways that he rendered that last relationship, the one where he does murder the woman, but like, it's uncomfortable to talk about. You know what I mean? It's uncomfortable to talk about. What was your reaction to that one?
Okay, so again, I'm reading this through 2022, right? Like, and I can't not see the way that black men and white women are portrayed in so much of like 1995 media. Like it just felt like so bad.
What do you mean? Like, is it like as in like not necessary or as in like badly rendered?
It just felt like so like it's like, oh, of course the black man is the brute and like the woman. But then I guess they sort of flips because she's egging him on. And I also love Shakespeare, and Othello is one of my favorite plays ever. And so there's all these references to Othello. And I kept thinking about that framework because in Othello, Desdemona is like really the victim. There's no sense of like her cheating. There's this handkerchief in both of the books. But in Othello, it's placed there by Emilia, Iago's wife. By accident, she didn't know what she was doing. I love Emilia, one of my favorite characters. And in this, the handkerchief is left behind by like another man because Isabella Seymour is having an affair or something like that. And like she's painted as more evil and like conniving. I thought that part of the book was the most compelling, like finally getting to the end and like hearing how that story broke out, I thought was really compelling. But of course, as I'm reading it, I'm feeling like this makes black men look bad and like this makes women look bad. And this whole thing is weird. And then I was like, oh, is this some sort of like sexual? Did they die having sex? Like he was aroused by this thing that happened to them. I don't know. It just felt, I don't know how to make sense of it, I guess.
There's this quote that I think about a lot from Frantz Fanon, where he sort of, I think it's in Wretched of the Earth. He sort of talks about the toll that colonialism exacts on the black person. And the black psyche specifically. Maybe it's in Black Skin, White Masks. I can't keep my Frantz Fanon straight, but he sort of talks about who among us is able to do something like that. But he sort of talks about wanting to be loved as a white man. He's saying that like there's something about like how, by loving me, I'm sort of, by a white woman loving him. He sort of is like, oh, so then I become worthy of white love, which makes me, which transforms me as a person. I think Tayeb Salih was trying to play with some of these ideas of what are the types of love that you desire? What are the type of ways that you desire to be seen as? And like, I think you're right. Like there's something about these characters on the one hand being too reduced to their metaphor, but on the other, does that sharpen the metaphor or does it make it like weaker? Like I constantly struggle with that question with this novel. Is like, is that like, is the metaphor too stripped of the unnecessary stuff and therefore sharper, or is the metaphor too weak because it's too like this character represents this thing, and I don't know. I don't know. I haven't settled on a place when it comes to that.
I have also not settled on a place for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that the metaphor is like very pointed. And to that point, this does feel like a play. Right? Like I feel like plays are like, this is the metaphor.
Yes.
But I think part of my issue and the reason that I'm having a hard time saying whether it's like too stripped or too strong or whatever is because I don't understand the context well enough for this entire book. And so to me, it feels very like this is a metaphor. But I also wonder again, like if I'm reading this book with the knowledge and the context and like, I think like, for example, I think if I read a novel from the 1960s about race in America.
Yeah.
In this same style, right? Like he's from the South and he goes to the North and he's treated not badly, even though of course he is because racism is there too. But whatever, sure. I think that I would understand it better and be able to be like, oh, I see what he's doing with this metaphor and like it's so obvious, but really he's playing at this or that. And I don't have that context for this book. And so it's really hard to know what it would feel like even in like even in 2022, I think I could grapple with a 1966 novel about American racism in a way that I just don't have the chops to grapple with this.
So some of the let's fill in, I guess, like some of the context. Like some of the context might be, so like you have like this newly independent Sudan that really wants to identify more with the Arabs than it does the blackness, like the black parts of Africa.
But that's divided North and South, right? Like the North is where the seat of the government is, and the people who have been appointed to govern in the Sudan are the people who are appointed by the Egyptians and the British. And those are like the light-skinned Arab North. Arab and then in the South, there's like the black, more African, if you will, vibe.
That's okay. Yes, but so like when you have a country that is divided that way and like you have the North quite sure that it should be allowed to govern, that it should be quite, like allowed to maintain its position of power, you, I think, have to do quite a few mental gymnastics to say, I am more superior to these people. These are the ways that I will align myself with the occupiers, that I align myself with the colonialists. In order to gain more and more proximity to them, you got to kind of see yourself in a certain light. And I guess like that's some of the context that's missing here in the sense that Tayeb Salih would have been seeing the ways that Sudan as a country and the way that it was being founded was trying to specifically write out certain parts of the country and say like this doesn't really belong in our conception of what Sudan is. But doing so is like making yourself blind to everything that you are, like to the people that you belong to. It sort of dehumanizes certain people, and like and there's a backwards lookingness to that.
Right. Do you think that, or I guess let me ask you, we'll speak to your parents specifically because you mentioned that they'd read it. Yeah. Do they feel warmly about this book?
I think they feel warmly that it's an achievement. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's possible to feel warmly about this book. Like it's a grim book,
Yeah. I mean, proud of,
like, do they hold
do they embrace it? Do they embrace this book, or are they like, oh, that Tayeb Salih is he's full of it kind of vibe?
They do. I think they do. They do. Like my mom sort of talks proudly about having read it when she was in school and having to sort of like do like reports on it, But then also my dad talks about watching the more aggressively conservative Muslim government come in and say, we're banning this book because it sort of like, it renders us in a light that we don't want to be seen. Like there's all these people who are like, they're having sex and they're getting drunk. And like, is that really how we want to see ourselves? And so it kind of becomes a site of conflict in that way, like as a mirror is contested. And so I think my dad, just being naturally who he is, he's drawn to that. He's drawn to like the idea of like this is a really contested book because, for many, many years, Sudan's government wanted to ban it. I think it's like now widely available in Sudan, but like it's, what happens when a book kind of becomes banned is it becomes like, what does it say about us? It's so bad that we don't even want to hold up this part of our history and see it. But I think generally speaking, yeah, it is highly regarded.
Right. Okay. I want to ask a question about the actual like content of the book and less about its social context.
Okay.
My standout scene, the murder-suicide, of course, because I have problems, love a murder, love a suicide in a book.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I just like dark books. I like when, bad shit happens. Throughout the book, the narrator, throughout this section, the narrator keeps being like, how is this connected to Mustafa Said? He keeps asking, like, how is he sort of to blame for this?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what do you think? Is he to blame for this? Like, is this his legacy, or is this just like a totally unrelated bad thing that happens to these characters?
I think it's a bad thing that happens to these characters, but the narrator's obsession is this must say something about people who are like me, right? This must say something who are people like me. So like that's why it must say something about someone like Mustafa Said. Like, so like I think that's something that it's kind of like the looking for conflict within yourself in a way. Is sort of like assuming that because he's like me, he must have caused something like this to happen. He must have been the person to do this. That's how I read that. Like I read that as like searching for catastrophe, if you will, searching for the ways that you are the originator of evil. And yeah, that was my interpretation of it. What about you?
Interesting. I don't know. I kept thinking like, so, okay, I read the narrator and Mustafa's relationship as, I read Mustafa as like an unreliable character. And so I read him, like I read skeptically about him. Like I was like, oh, this can't be true. Like, I don't believe it. He didn't do this. This isn't how it happened. This isn't how the trial went. So when we get to this part where it's like, oh, how is he responsible? Like I'm looking for answers. I sort of was like, this actually isn't his fault. Like this can't be laid at his feet. He's been dead. But now when I'm thinking about it more, I'm like, maybe just this association with him, like him introducing any sort of different ideas into this community that's like very insular by choice. Like they talk about, the fact that Mustafa is able to marry Hosanna is because Hosanna's dad like sort of doesn't give a fuck about like the ritual and the rules within the community. But normally the women of this community don't marry people who aren't from the community. Like that's clearly stated. So now I'm starting to think maybe he's to blame just by like when you put a drop of red food coloring in the water, it all turns kind of pink. Like it's not like it caused a tidal wave, but it does sort of shift.
Like he's sort of like the wild factor. Who's like,
yeah, but then on the flip side of that, she didn't even know what was going on with him. Like she says that he has this room. I don't even know what's in there. So it's not like he was espousing these other ideas. But then on the flip side of that, after everything happens, everyone who's still alive is like, this doesn't happen here. This doesn't happen here. This doesn't happen. We don't do this. We've never had a murder. We've never had this situation.
Yeah.
And so.
But this is what I mean by looking for a catastrophe, right? In the sense of like being like, it must be due to this person. Because like, you don't think that murder-suicide would have happened anyway without him? You know what I mean? Like, do you not think so?
If he had, well, the problem is that she becomes a widow because he dies. So like, chain of events, of course, none of this would happen because she would have been married to someone else probably before him. And then maybe they would still be alive, whatever. But let's just take it for he dies and she gets married to him. And if her original husband had not been him, but just like another person from the town, does this happen? I mean, maybe, I don't know. Whenever terrible things happen, everyone who knows the person and loves the person says, they weren't like this. They never would have done this. This kind of stuff doesn't happen in this town.
Yeah.
But this shit happens in towns.
This shit happens in towns. And like
someone has to do it. And does that mean that everyone that they met is somehow to blame?
Well, especially a figure like Mustafa Said, who like there's such like a natural inclination to be like, and it's because of that relationship. It's because of what he, like, the darkness that he brought to this place. Whereas
but
in fact,
that also,
the damage Well, it's just that the damage that he did was mostly internal, right? Like that's
Right.
Like that's the part that's so striking is like maybe being around someone who's that damaged, it does something to you. I don't know, but my interpretation was that like I don't think this can be laid at his feet.
Yeah, that's how I feel. But then the other part is like, and who knows if this was intentional or again a 2022 reading, but then you can read that as a horrible like anti-immigrant sentiment almost. Like this outsider comes into our community and destroys our pure murder-free zone.
But he's not an outsider, right? Like that's what's complicated about it, is that like
But he is, because he's not from their community.
I understand, but what I mean to say is that like as like a returning Sudanese person who has like this kind of like conception of like, here's like my idea of this homeland and I'm going to live out maybe like a fantasy of the rural Sudanese life. Like there's something about the fact that he's returning to that full of this hatred, full of, I mean, all the awful things that he did when he was in the West, that like, to me makes him a compelling kind of chaos character, but not one that you specifically go to be like, okay, he's an immigrant and therefore he's responsible for our bad sort of things. You know?
No, I don't think he's an immigrant. I think he's a metaphor for the immigrant. That's what I meant.
I see. Because he became foreign in a way.
Yes, because he's because he's a foreigner to this small community. He's not a foreigner to the country, but he's like, I think if you're reading this with a anti-immigrant lean, you could easily read into him as being the fault. You know what I mean? But I think that, again, is a 2022 lens that I'm reading it with. I know that in the context of the story, he's not an immigrant. He's just like a city guy who comes to the town, basically.
Yes.
But if you're reading like for all the metaphors, I was like, oh, you could read this as a metaphor for outsider or like immigrant or whatever. And you could say that he brought violence. It's like very Trumpian. It's very Mexican murderer rapists, right?
That's such an interesting read that would have just never occurred to me. I'm so fascinated by that. And I think it's because I was so obsessed with just trying to think about the tensions of 1966 less than the tensions of 2022. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of, you know, what would lead like a city guy to go to like this village? And like part of the motivation is you want to find peace, but part of the motivation is you want to maybe return to an idea of Sudan that never existed. Like that's why is like this like the most sort of frozen kind of version of Sudan that you could find.
Right.
And I think what's interesting about Tayeb Salih is that like he writes a lot of his novels are set in the same place. Like a lot of his
same
novels
like
are
fictional town, right?
The same fictional town. And I think it's because for him, like that can be a site where you can crash all these ideas into each other and see what happens. And so that felt like, to me, that felt like more natural but also I sort of knew that going in, right? I knew that going into the novel. So maybe you're right. Maybe like reading too much about the novel beforehand can really affect the way you end up reading it.
As I mentioned, actually, I'll do it now and then we'll take a break. As I mentioned, I love Shakespeare. And one of the things about Shakespeare, again, to your point about this maybe being a play, is that when you do Shakespeare, you don't have to do it in 1605 London. You know, you can set Othello in Vietnam 1971, you know, like, or you can set it in Chicago or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I feel like what makes this book kind of, you know, stand the test of time, if you will, is that you can very well read this book 1966 or like 1956 or whatever when it's set, but you can also like add things onto it like I have done because I'm, again, really good at inserting myself into things.
Yes.
But I do think that that's the kind of thing that makes a good book a great book is when you can do that. Like I think a book that I don't think is great, but I know people think is great is like The Great Gatsby. And I feel like that's one of those books that has that fiction-y fiction thing where it's like you can project these ideas from the 1920s, but also these ideas from the 2020s. And I do feel like this book has room for that a lot, which is like the misogyny part of it. I don't think that was the point. I don't think he was trying to be like, I'm going to write about sexism. But hello, here I am here, and we're talking about female circumcision, and it feels really different in a pre-post Roe world, you know? Like,
right, 100%. First of all, pre-post Roe is a great expression. It's like
because we're not fully post Roe, but like post. We're pre-post.
You're in this sort of twilight zone where like, we know this is happening, but it hasn't happened.
It's coming. Has it come since we've been recording? It's possible.
Yeah.
And probably when you all are
like,
listening, it will have come because we're recording this at the end of June. So just
that's
FYI.
very true. That's very true and very complicated. But I think there's something about the sparseness of the book too, right? That lets you sort of project all those things into it, because the more details you have filled in, the less space there is for your interpretation of these things. I mean, I think the same deal with the Great Gatsby, in the sense that like, because of its slimness, it sort of allows you to be like, let me fold in all of these social contexts that didn't necessarily exist in there. I think the difference with this book, though, is that it's a matter of whether you allow yourself to insert too much that isn't about migration specifically, right? Like, and by this I mean just like the sort of internal colonial conflict, because as a book about that is very sharp and very focused, as a book about lots of other things, it gets a little bit less, it gets a little bit more murky, right?
Yeah. It doesn't become I guess it's not a book about those things, but it's a book that references those things.
Yeah.
Like, I would not say that this is a book about about a metaphor for immigration at all, but I would say that there are moments where it's like, if you wanted to read into this book, you could find that there. If you wanted 100%. To read this into that book, you could find that there. Okay, wait, let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to traceythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back. Very quick break. Okay, we talked about this at the start, and I wanted to ask you about this last time, but we ran out of time, about language, because one of the moments in your book, Son of Elsewhere, that I found really striking was when you were talking to an employee at your dad's store and the word disturbed came up and you didn't know what it meant. And then he sort of explained it to you. And then I kept reading like the next few sentences and I was like, oh my God, this is a person who as a child did not speak English and was learning English at like formative years for becoming an adult. And now your job is to explain words and things to people using this language that you learned.
Yeah.
Is that trippy for you?
It's really hard. It's genuinely really hard. Like in the sense that like, I'm always like, what license do I have to just like interpret words in this way? I think like you have to sort of eventually give yourself license to be like, I do this work for a living and like the proof of me doing it is that I've been doing it. But it's a hard journey to begin doing because you're like, I'm new to this. And it's like, when do you begin to feel less new and then eventually like capable of commentary and analysis? You know what I mean? I was 12 when I started learning how to speak English. Like that's pretty late in life, you know?
Yeah.
And it feels pretty late in life. So I feel complicated about that part all the time.
I just think it's so interesting because I noticed it before that part of the book. There was like, I can't remember what the word was, but you explained what a word meant in a really interesting and like totally accurate way. And I was like, wow, what a great way to explain whatever this is. And then you mentioned that part and I was like, oh my God, of course, right. He learned English and now he is shaping English. And I think that's so fucking cool.
Thank you. I really like that part of my job, you know, but also I like to think that it gives me this like this unique perspective of, you know, none of it is taken for granted. And so a lot of it, I just kind of feel like I can take apart and put together as I please. And maybe it works really well sometimes. And other times I'm like, Elamin, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I honestly like those moments come together most of the time.
Don't we all have those moments? Part of my struggle reading this book is I felt like the language was really stilted. And I couldn't tell if that's because like in Arabic, there's a use of like more metaphor in language, or if that's just stylized for this particular author, because in your book, you do talk about how you don't speak Arabic like an adult, you speak like a child, because that's as far as you really learned Arabic. And so I was wondering if like, because the way that you talked about in that book, in your book also, you sort of talked about how you couldn't articulate like these complex feelings around grief in the case of this essay because you just didn't have the range. And I'm wondering if in Arabic there is more use of metaphor in language and like the language is a little more heightened.
Definitely. Like Arabic is like by nature like a deeply flowery language, you know? To the point where like, just like regular everyday conversation contains a lot of elaborate metaphors, which are like, I would say in English are replaced by like placeholder idioms a lot. Like there's a lot of idioms that we just kind of use as shorthand for a lot of, you know, different expressions. But in Arabic, like there's a lot of metaphor and like there is, I have a fear, but also a real curiosity about reading Season of Migration in Arabic because I can read Arabic. I don't know how to speak it at that level. And I just keep being like, one day I will gather the nerves necessary to go and do that. Just so I can sort of like grasp my mind around the ways that economy of translation ended up working, you know, because like sometimes a metaphor will be deployed and it will take me, no joke, like paragraphs and paragraphs to try to begin to explain what that metaphor was trying to stand in for. And so I think the fact that the translation was so short is like so impressive to me that it's something I want to spend some more time with for sure.
Okay. I'm glad for you to say that because I definitely felt like it was stilted and I was like, is this me? But maybe it's just the translation is the translation. Okay. Yeah. Last thing we have to talk about, the ending.
Yes. What do you think happens?
Okay. Well, he lives. He swims. Do you think he gets rescued? Yeah, he wants to live. Oh, is there an option that he dies?
No, I mean, he's just yelling help. So I don't know if he's like, you know, like, is he getting rescued as in it's going to work or is he?
Oh. So there's an option that he's yelling help and he still drowns. Yeah. Too late. It's too late. He's too far gone.
What if he's too far gone?
So I read it that he lived, which is unlike me. I usually pick a death if there's an option for death, but I didn't even really think that was an option.
His will to live certainly came back, right? His will to sort of like say, no, I want to play a part in my country and my community and the place where I live. Yeah, that suddenly kind of came bursting forth. But the question is like whether it's too late.
Okay, here's the thing. I think he lives, but I think he becomes a shitty person. Like, I don't think he lives and is like, okay, I'm going to take what I've learned and like do right by my community and like come back home and like be here and whatever. I think he lives and he's like, I'm going to spend more time in the city. I'm going to bring more white shit here. I'm going to try to become a prime minister. Like, I think he goes full conservative asshole.
Yeah. I buy that. I buy that conception of like where he goes from there in terms of feeling like needing to contend with the legacy of Mustafa Saeed and what that does to a person. I always kind of interpret. I thought it was a more compelling interpretation to me to interpret it as he just at the moment of deciding to live, he dies.
That's a better ending.
Is he? Just in the sense of like finally getting to the point where like you kind of understand yourself and your relationship to this, and you've maybe worked out how to not be a toxic person while also carrying with you all the useful seeds of the West. And then as you pull those together out of you and you go, okay, I've got it, then you don't make it. But I like I like your ending. I like your ending better than I like my ending. So I don't know.
No, your ending's better. Okay, cover and title. What's your cover look like? Is it this thing?
No, not at all. What is
My
what is that
cover's
thing?
so fucking hideous.
What is that thing?
It's like the mountains, and then there's like a moon, and then there's like a claw in the water. I'm assuming that's the Nile. It's a very still portion of the Nile, I guess, and there is a shallow claw sticking out.
Can you tell me does it have a name for that painting? Like, what the hell is that?
Cover image. It's The Scapegoat by William Holman Hunt.
Jesus. Nope, that's not the cover that I have.
Do you have the cool orange one?
No, I have a blue one.
Oh. There's a cool orange one with like a lady on it that I really wanted. Couldn't find it.
Mine's boring, man. It's like a Penguin Classics cover. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
It's like this one. Wait, can you see?
Not
you can't
really.
see. Let me describe it. It's got like this like old coffee cup that has been shattered. Oh no, it's a vase. It's been like shattered on the carpet.
That's what Isabella made him do.
Yes, exactly. And it's beautiful, but I kind of wish I had yours.
Mine's not very compelling to me. I'm like, I have no idea. I thought this book was gonna be about monsters. And then the title, Season of Migration to the North.
I have no particular thoughts, positive or negative, about that.
Same.
But what about you? Like, did you? I read the novels. Like, this could have been called anything else. Like,
it could have been called. It could have been called Mustafa Said, and it would have been equally as informative as Season of Migration to the North. It means nothing to me.
Yeah,
okay,
I agree.
Great.
It's something that I wanted to ask people about. I was like, I'm gonna go back to my parents and be like, why is this book called that? Like, what's the deal with this? And so, is there a specific bird that has a season where it migrates north that I don't know about? You know, I got questions.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It didn't. I don't know what I thought it was going to be. The book was going to be about, but it wasn't about what I thought Season of Migration to the North was. But it wasn't not about that. I don't know.
Was your friend who recommended this book to you? Are they Sudanese? Like, is that how they got?
No, it's Reggie Reads. Do you know him on Instagram? He loved the book. He read it a few months ago. He does this thing called 10 Books, 10 Decades challenge, where in the calendar year, he challenges people to read a book from 10 different decades. And he read this for the 1960s. And he said he loved it. And it's like one of his top 10 favorite books ever. And I was like, okay, well, I have to, if it's one of your top 10, I have to read it. It's not one of my top 10 ever, but I'm really glad we read it and did it because I've never read a book by a Sudanese national aside from you and him. I guess you're not a Sudanese national. You're a Canadian national now. Or what you're both? It's complicated.
I'm mostly Canadian, but I don't think I can be stripped of my citizenship. So,
No. Yeah. So you're both. But your book and this book together, in my mind, are the two books I've read by Sudanese people. And I'm glad that I did. And I thought it was really interesting. And I think it's cool to read classic literature from other countries.
Have you ever read?
I just don't do it enough.
Have you ever read Layla Abu Lala?
No.
Most often, I think in English, style as Leela Abu Leela is like how it's usually written. She's like probably the most prominent Sudanese writer working now, I would say. She wrote like Lyrics Alley is one of her books. That's probably her like big one.
No, but I'm going to check it out. I really like reading books by people who aren't American.
Yes.
It's my new favorite thing.
Yes.
They're better. Don't tell America.
I won't tell America. America, don't listen to this.
Okay, everybody, this is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and he wrote the book Son of Elsewhere, and you can get his book anywhere you get your books. And Elamin, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that does it for us today. Thank you so much to Elamin for being our guest, and a special thank you to Abdi Omer for helping make this conversation possible. Okay, announcement time. Our book club pick for August is the personal essay collection, How to Write an Autobiographical Novel by Alexander Chee. We will be discussing this book on Wednesday, August 31st, and you can find out who our guest will be for breaking down this book by tuning in next week. Let me just say, I am very excited. If you love the show and want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack, and make sure to subscribe to the Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter, and check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Lauren Tyree. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tagirajis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.